everybody, welcome to The World This Week. On the show, from the UN's attempt to bring peace to Syria to a Trump-Putin love affair. And also photography like you've never seen before. But first, some of the stories that define the world this week.
The people of Syria have suffered enough. So
the start of
We will be watching what happens very carefully in the economy.
If the United States does not lead, there is not another leader.
With me this Sunday are Alon Pincus and Barbara Palrom.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of The World This Week. The UN has just reached an agreement on the roadmap for Syria. Barbara, are you excited?
Listen, we have to welcome a unanimous decision by the Security Council. This Resolution 2249 is a long shot, but it is a unanimous diplomatic stab at trying to bring some type of a diplomatic arrangement to Syria. Everyone believes that force is not an option. You cannot settle this by continued war. We've been almost 5 years in this slaughter, and I think we should be a little bit gracious and try to give them a chance. Now, the real stickler, of course, is whether Assad goes or stays. That's been very clear. The West papered over that in order to reach agreement with Russia. But what concerns me is the list of terror organizations that cannot be included in this inclusive, non-sectarian process. Jordan is responsible for drawing up the list of names. There's already about 20, and I hope that this resolution and this effort will not get caught up on who to exclude from the plan.
Alon, it sounds very theoretic. We'll put them on one table and we'll have an agreement. It sounds familiar, It's like the Israel and the Palestinians.
Yeah. Except that with the Israelis and Palestinians, surprisingly, there's a structure. At least everyone understands where this is headed to, even though we failed to get there. With Syria, I fail to see the structure and I fail to see the sequence, because for all intents and purposes, Syria has been disintegrated. Now, does anyone think in his right mind that Syria will maintain some kind of territorial political integrity at the end of this process? I just do not see that happening. It'll have to be divided into 2 or 3 states, much like Iraq was.
Complicated, very complicated. All right, there's a new love affair in the air. Watch this.
And they have problems. We all have problems. Russia's got plenty of problems. But I'll tell you what, if Putin likes me and if he thinks I'm a good, smart person, which, I hope he believes it, I am. Actually, he's right, I am brilliant. You know that, right?
What is this, Barbara?
Listen, Putin at his press conference in Moscow last week talked about how Trump is the supreme leader in the presidential race. I think he wanted to say in the Republican primary race, but these two guys are so suited for one another. And I just would like to believe that this is still theory, because Trump will not actually be interoperating with Putin on any level.
Alon, this is ridiculous. Putin is the enemy, isn't he?
He is.
How can you get votes in America by being nice to Putin?
Well, you can't, which is why you can expect surely for Mr. Trump to reverse that and call for some kind of a no-fly zone over Syria to include Russian planes, to accuse Putin of expansionist policies in the Ukraine or the Baltics. Look, this is postmodern politics at its worst. 2 people saying a whole bunch of nonsense about each other, not meaning anything they say, and everyone is trying to figure out what strategic importance this has. It has none.
Right. Okay, let's watch Hillary from tonight.
We now finally are where we need to be. We have a strategy and a commitment to go after ISIS, which is a danger to us as well as the region. And we finally have a UN Security Council resolution bringing the world together to go after a political transition in Syria. If the United States does not lead, there is not another leader. There is a vacuum, and we have to lead if we're going to be successful.
Senator Saunders, please.
Well, we need to lead.
And when she says that, she does two things. She knows that to a degree, Republicans will try and turn the campaign on or into national security and foreign policy, which a few months from now we will sit here and say that the American public doesn't care about. But secondly, she needs to somehow distance herself from Obama, which is legitimate politics. And she's trying to do both in one debate.
Yeah, amazingly, we're going into foreign policy in this campaign. Look at these three people on the stage, Barbara. The Democratic Party, can't they do better than this?
It was pretty much sewed up from the very beginning once it was determined that Vice President Biden would not get into the race. Hillary had the machine and the money pretty much to run it. The Senator Sanders, Bernie Sanders, is still hot with the young voters. Very, very hot. And but this is really a single race.
All right. Now, more on the campaign from Danielle Ziri, I-24 News correspondent in New York. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, Jacob.
First of all, let's watch Donald Trump and Jeb Bush at each other's throats.
Oh, I know you're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is
real tough.
You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the presidency.
Let's see. I'm at 42 and you're at 3, so far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter. Donald, is great at the one-liners, but he's a chaos candidate. And he'd be a chaos president.
Jeb doesn't really believe I'm unhinged. He said that very simply because he has failed in this campaign.
He gets his foreign policy experience from the shows.
Come on,
that is not a serious kind of candidate.
I know you're trying to build up your energy, Jeb, but it's not working
one at a
very
time.
well.
Okay, very sophisticated. Danielle, who's the winner this time?
Well, Jacob, really, this is a case of the establishment against the outsider. And what I call by that is the establishment candidate here is Jeb Bush. He was practically born in the Republican Party, of course, with two of his family members being former presidents. And he represents really the GOP as an institution. And then on the other side, you have Donald Trump, who's sort of the outsider. He just came in and brings something new in that sense. And I think, there's no doubt Jeb Bush did very well on Tuesday's debate. He did show that he can throw a punch, especially to Donald Trump. He was sort of the only one to attack him. But the polls are still showing that it's doing nothing for Donald Trump. He's still on top, still remains at the top of the polls. And that is explained by another poll that we found this week that actually says that GOP voters prefer an outsider because they view outsiders as bringing something new, and they think that having someone in the White House who is not a career politician, who hasn't done politics before, will be the change that that America needed. So actually 61% believe that in the GOP voters, and that's why we still see Donald Trump on top.
Right. The other odd couple was Ted Cruz, who plays an outsider, and Marco Rubio. Let's watch this.
Does Ted Cruz rule out ever legalizing people that are in this country illegally now?
Senator Cruz?
I have never supported legalization.
Do you rule it out?
I have never supported legalization. For Marco to suggest our record's the same, it is like suggesting the fireman and the arsonist have the same record because they're both at the scene of the fire.
I personally am open to allowing people to apply for a green card.
We will build a wall that works, and I'll get Donald Trump to pay for it.
I'll build it.
Daniel Rubio is sort of the last hope for the establishment now, isn't he?
Yeah, sort of. The GOP sees great things in Marco Rubio. I mean, I think we've seen it from the beginning. He's charismatic. He can speak in front of an audience. He is very knowledgeable, especially in terms of foreign policy when you compare him to the other candidates. And of course, his modest background. His mom was a maid. I mean, all this works really well for him. And the party leaders really want to support Rubio because Ted Cruz is actually terrifying for the GOP. And the reason for that is if you actually look at his stance on a lot of the issues issues, they're not too far off from Donald Trump. And some people are even saying that Ted Cruz is even worse and more extreme than Donald Trump. But because Donald Trump is the one making so much noise, in comparison, next to him, Ted Cruz just seems like a very quiet and nice guy. And I think the GOP is really scared of that, because if one of those very provocative, loud candidates like Donald Trump, Ben Carson, or maybe Ted Cruz get the nomination, they are worried that it will just be like handing a free ticket straight to the White House for Hillary Clinton.
So any way you look at it, the Republican Party looks like it's in disarray.
Yeah, I think we can say that it's a big mess over there. But, you know, this is really the case of the establishment versus the outsider. We've seen this in all the candidates sort of demonstrate that. And I think, yes, it's a big mess, and they're very worried. We've heard, you know, Donald Trump say something on this debate that he hasn't said before, actually refused to say on the very first debate when he was asked. He pledged to still, you know, run within the GOP, within the Republican Party, and not run as an independent, which is something he never wanted to say before. But still, the party, the leadership of the party, is very worried because, you know, we are quite far off inside the campaign right now for the nomination, and we have at least over 10 candidates still remaining. They're not falling off of the race, so they're very worried that the convention in Cleveland in July will be a brokered convention, which means, you know, that would be the case if none of the candidates can secure the nomination on a first ballot vote. Then that means that there will be more rounds of votes to get a candidate, and that hasn't happened in 70 years. Experts are saying that it's unlikely, but it's still something that people think about.
Right. Daniel Ziri in New York, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob.
Now, a different point of view of New York City. With us from New York is photographer George Steinmetz, who takes beautiful aerial shots of the city. They are collected in a new book, New York Air, and there's also an exhibition on the Lower East Side. Thank you very much for joining us, George.
Pleasure.
Well, you tell us, what are your favorites New York photos?
Well, I mean, I think you probably see them in the background here, but my favorite pictures of New York are the ones where you can see people and you see human behavior in the city, in the matrix, in the urban matrix.
You know, there's a sense of spying to this. You can see some private stuff because people don't realize you're up there, right?
That's true. Well, in some cases, when you get really low and people are like bored in the park or out on a roof sunbathing, then they kind of look up. But for the most part, people are just going about their daily business, and they're not really aware.
With the explosion of drones, it has become very easy to get sky-high pictures like that. This is incredible, a game changer, isn't it?
Well, drones are definitely changing the possibilities in aerial photography, but I mean, the pictures I took here, many of them wouldn't really be practical to do with a drone, not to mention that it would be illegal to do them in the city, but even besides legal aspects, it's a lot of the work I'm doing is from a significant altitude with telephoto lenses, and drones aren't really very good at that. The drone perspective is interesting, but it's a different one.
Explain to us a bit more on the qualities you get by shooting this way.
Well, I mean, I've been doing aerial photographs for a long time, and I started with a motorized paraglider, and the paraglider is it's kind of like a flying lawn chair where you have a big leaf blower on your back and a parachute overhead, and when I'm flying that, I have an unrestricted view horizontally and vertically, and I used a lot of wide-angle lenses for that, and it's uniquely suited for that. I found for the helicopter, it was much better for a telephoto perspective in the city, and I felt the city looked a lot better when I saw it from a distance with the telephoto because it kept all the lines straight, and I could kind of compress the people in the city. And so it changed the way I saw when I was photographing the city by using a helicopter and a telephoto.
Mm-hmm. But most of your work is actually far away from New York City.
Well, I was photographing all the world's deserts, and they're very extreme environments, and they're very surreal and beautiful and very desolate. And in their desolation, I find a very exquisite beauty. I flew in 27 countries plus Antarctica. It was a very extensive project, and I found when I was traveling around the different deserts that they were all, it was like a disparate family that I was uniting in my pictures, and each one was related to the others, but it was unique in its own way. But New York is a very different beast, and New York it's very compact, and people think they know the city if they lived here their whole lives, but from the air it's a totally different place.
Do you have any favorite locations?
In New York, yeah, I kept finding myself going back to Central Park because it's kind of the lungs of the city, and it changes with the seasons, and it's just exquisitely laid out, and there's always something to find there. It's just there are certain parks, like I go back to Washington Square Park almost every flight because graphically it's really beautiful from the air, and it has this beautiful like a miniature Arc de Triomphe in it, and I'd always find something there. There are certain places like that, and the waterfront of the city is always interesting to explore. A lot of people out there using it, and it's also been redeveloped. And one of the really interesting things about New York is the city's gone through tremendous change. It's growing at an incredibly rapid rate right now, and so to see the dynamism of the city is very exciting.
Okay, I'll mention again that you have a new book, and there's also an exhibition on the Lower East Side. Thank you very much, George, for joining us.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thank you.
And this has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a great week.